I could hoe into Andrew, but it's notaboutme.com. When the wonderful people at the Social Good Summit asked somebody from the Bread and Butter Project to speak, I stupidly stuck my hand up. And one of the things they gave me, very, very good instructions, thank you, Katja. One of the things they gave me was a list of instructions which said, establish your licence to talk about the topic you're going to talk about. And I have to say, on this stage today, with all of these amazing social entrepreneurs and change makers, I feel a bit of a fraud. Because you see, I'm not a baker and I am not a refugee. But nobody else volunteered to speak, so I am going to do my best to try and explain a little bit about our amazing project, where it's come from, where we are today, and hopefully, if you feel suitably inspired, what you can do to help us grow into the future. So actually, where we came from is a place where Andrew and I both come from. In 1939, September the 1st, 1939, so almost 80 years ago today, the Germans invaded Poland, and hundreds of thousands of Polish Jews fled east to get away from the Nazi terror, including my grandparents and Andrew's forebears, who became friends with my grandparents. And my grandparents found themselves stuck in what was briefly independent Lithuania and soon Soviet-occupied Lithuania. And my grandmother, stupidly she says, fell pregnant. And they were stuck there as refugees and they didn't know what to do. And my grandparents were blessed by a miracle to receive a visa, a transit visa, from a Japanese consul by the name of Sempo Sugihara, which gave them the opportunity to flee war-torn Europe, take the Trans-Siberian Railway, and end up in Japan, where they were stuck with about 3,000 other Jewish refugees. This photo shows my grandfather serving on a committee of refugees in 1941, helping to distribute food and clothing to the other refugees. My father was born in Japan, a stateless refugee, in March 1941. I suspect he was the only Jewish boy circumcised in March 1941 in Japan. And my grandparents were lucky, out of all those refugees, to receive temporary protection visas and came to Australia just before the Pacific War started. They arrived here in August 1941. The war in the Pacific was to have a dramatic impact on another family, that of my brother-in-law, Paul Allen. Paul's grandfather was born in Mauritius. He was what they called a Cape Coloured. He moved to South Africa, where he met his wife and they married, and then they fled the racial discrimination of South Africa and they were living in Hong Kong as the Japanese swept down the Malaya Peninsula and war was imminent. Paul's grandfather was worried about his pregnant wife and so put her on a boat, didn't really know where to, but hopefully to safety. And Paul's father was born on that boat en route to the Philippines. He survived the war in the Philippines and came to Australia, where he found refuge after the war. So it's not all that surprising that when the daughter of a man born a stateless refugee in Kobe meets the son of a man born on a leaky boat on the way to the Philippines, something magical would happen, and I'm not talking just about my nieces and nephew. Jess and Paul were inspired to do some good, and Paul had been starting his own bakery. You probably queued up outside Burke Street Bakery. And Paul was invited by a group of nuns in a place called Mai Sot on the Thai-Myanmar border to help repair an old oven which had broken down and maybe make some bread, teach people to make bread. And then my sister, being quite entrepreneurial, took that bread to the local hotels because sadly where there are refugees there are lots of Westerners staying in nice hotels. And my sister said, you should buy this bread so these nuns can teach the kids. And they did. And so a small business was born. And that business, I'm happy to say, continues to this day. When Jess and Paul came home, they were inspired by the sense that they'd done something good. And they met with some of their friends who wear white t-shirts and they said, we've just been to Thailand and we've done this amazing thing. And their friends, some of whom were from a little bit more the corporate end of town, like many of you in the audience today, said, well, you've just started a social enterprise. And Jessica and Paul said, well, what's a social enterprise? And once the basics were explained, I think Paul decided, and with the great support of his business partner Dave McGuinness, and I know we have some of Dave's relatives here, that why don't we do that here in Sydney? Why is it that only the lawyers and management consultants and accountants get to do all the pro bono fun? And a group formed with the idea of creating a social enterprise bakery. Paul had learnt from growing his business two things. Firstly, there was a demand for Bourke Street bakery bread. He was fielding calls on a regular basis from cafes and corporates and venues to say, we'd love your bread. But Paul was very focused on his own retail business and really didn't want to take up that opportunity at the time. But it helps when you sell a legally available addictive product. And then the second thing Paul knew was he was always struggling to find bakers, because it's a bloody hard job and it takes a pretty special person who's willing to get up at those hours and look after the sourdough starter. And so the idea was formed to form a training bakery, and at least initially it wasn't obvious who the target of the training would be. But given Jessica and Paul's background, I think it sort of was inevitable and very helpful at the time, given some of the negativity in the press, that a decision was made to target the training towards refugees and asylum seekers in Australia. Very early support was given to us by the Westpac Foundation, and they provided a little video, which I'm just going to show you now, which will give you a sense of what's going on in our bakery.
I'm originally Iranian. I come to Australia in 2012, and I was in the detention for a long time, close to 2 years. Actually, if I say exactly 21 months, I was in the detention center. When I was in the detention center, many Australian community actually, they came for visit us. In the visit area actually, that visit time, I meet with some gentleman, his name is Andre. He told me about the bread and butter project. He said me, this company give you good skill and you can find easy job. Actually, they make the people baker.
The Bread and Butter Project is a social enterprise where 100% of the profits from our bread and pastry sales go back into teaching asylum seekers and refugees the art of baking. So the idea of the Bread and Butter Project came when I went to visit an orphanage, and the nuns there were teaching refugee women how to bake and then selling that product into town.
I didn't have any idea about the bread. When I come to Bread and Butter Project, I saw is wow. Different style of bread. Actually, we call sourdough. It's lovely bread. Please, I say to everyone, please try our bread, Bread and Butter Project. It's really lovely. I'm happy now I'm here. And I have my own shop in my home country, actually, in the Iran. Now I'm thinking about my future. Actually, it is my dream. I have my own shop, maybe bakery. I'm working in the bakery. Yeah, pretty sure, bakery. I love it.
So Masood is actually not working as a baker at the moment, he's working as a painter, but he's still very much part of our family. But we are very privileged to have with us today Patil, who is one of our most recent graduates. And so I'd like to invite her to come and join me on the stage. If you could make her very welcome, please.
Good morning, everyone.
So Patil,
Sorry.
so how do you come to be standing on this stage?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Patil. I'm from Syria. I was living in Aleppo. As you can see, I had very nice childhood. Embarrassing photos. So because of the war, we had to escape from Syria, move to Tartus, live there for 1 year. Then my father decided to move to Lebanon because Tartus it wasn't safe. So we moved to Lebanon, stayed there for 3 years. Then I studied English there because my father it was already decided to get us to Australia. My uncle was here. So then they called us from the embassy, like, you are accepted. So they said, like, you will go to class to know about Australia. So they teach us about kangaroos, flags, and there was something else like Vegemite. So when I saw it, I thought it's like something like sweet, like jam. When I tasted it, it was like salt. Like, what sort of country is this? Like, where I'm going to? So it was like nearly 2 years. I'm in Australia. Then I found myself in Bread and Butter project. I started the traineeship. So it was 6 to 7 months of traineeship, and then graduated with certificate of food processing and hospitality. And during the traineeship, I was supported by volunteer ESL tutor of English. And I'm so thankful for her. I'm so confident now to stand on the stage and to talk all of you today. So first, when I arrived in Australia, it was like hard to apply for a job and to get a job because there is no experience, no qualification, no English. So by Bread and Butter project, they are giving the opportunity to us, to the refugees, to get a job, to have experience, qualifications, and to all the refugees. And I'm so lucky to be employed by Bread and Butter project today and train the new group of trainees.
So our tagline at the Bread and Butter Project is the makers of bakers. And in many ways, building a sustainable and successful social enterprise and helping refugees and asylum seekers prepare for their new lives in Australia is not all that different to baking delicious bread. It starts with visionary and inspiring people, and you've met some of them already in the white t-shirts. And those people have to have access to really good recipes, and in the case of a social enterprise, that required a business plan.
Then we need good ingredients like flour, grains, and fruits.
Yes, and the ingredients we have at the social enterprise is the most amazing, committed, hard-working group of trainees. We are now, as our project has grown, inundated with applications. We regularly have 10 times as many people applying for training slots as we have slots available, and we now have the capacity to train up to 30 refugee bakers a year.
Once our ingredients are mixed, they need to be shaped gently.
Yes, and we do this at the Bread and Butter Project with a full-time social worker on staff who you can meet outside, and as Patil has said, a wonderful crew of volunteer retired teachers who are our ESL tutors, including my mum. In this photo here, you can see Ma from Myanmar, who was our very first graduate. She still works with us today. In fact, she pretty much runs the pastry room, and she's training the next generation of refugee bakers, including Safa from Eritrea, who just graduated with Patil about a week and a half ago.
The shaped loaves, after we give them time to rise, we push them in the ovens.
I don't want to push the metaphor too far. We don't put any trainees in the oven. But what we do is we give them an opportunity through the training program to rotate through the bakery and experience firsthand the different skills of making bread, making pastries, sometimes working in some of our in-store bakeries, helping with some of the logistics and the back office way of running a bakery.
I still love the smell of pastries and bread when they come out of the oven, and the most thing that I love to make is muffins.
Yes. Patil is the muffin queen of Marrickville.
After the bread is finished and the pastries are cooled and packed, they are ready to send to to our wonderful customers.
Yeah, we have now over 250 fantastic customers who support the business, including KPMG, who've been awesome, and Westpac, some of the banks, Macquarie and CBA. The tech companies love us, Google and Canva, and the law firms, of course, because they stay there long hours and need to eat lots of bread, Minters and Freehills. Sydney Uni has been much more supportive than UNSW, so we'll have to do something about that. And hopefully, and the reason we're here, your workplace soon.
We give our overbreak bread to charities, to local charities and food rescue groups and Oz Harvest.
Yeah, and how great is it to be sharing the stage with Ronnie Khan today? You'll often see the Oz Harvest van outside our bakery in Marrickville, though thankfully, thanks to some incredible consulting work that's been done for us by BCG and Pollen Consulting, we have less overbake than we used to. Just like our bread goes out into the world, then so too do our trainees. It's a very warm and familiar environment. It's hard to send them out into the world, but after a 6 to 8 month program, we graduate them with a TAFE Certificate 2 in hospitality and food. And some work that was done for us last year by the Social Impact Hub has shown that 100% of our graduates to date are either in full-time employment or education, and 100% of their kids are too, which is a really remarkable statistic. So our bakery is now just over 5 years old, and it is proving that social enterprise has the capacity to harness the power of the market for good and sustainably. We are selling nearly $5 million worth of bread a year, and that's covering about 90% of our costs.
Our dream for 2030 is a world that welcomes refugees like me and helps us to settle in our new homes.
Yes. And we're here today because we hope that you too can use the power of social enterprise to help make it happen. So how can you help?
You can help us to tell positive stories about refugees.
You can employ our graduates. So we've presently got a 100% success rate, and we're very keen to keep it that way.
You can buy our bread. It's really so delicious.
So you can buy our bread at retail at Harris Farm. We have 2 in-store bakeries, one in Bondi Junction and one in Leichhardt. I'm sorry to the people in the UK. For events like this, and we hope you enjoy the goodies that we're going to provide you in the breaks today. And most importantly, for your workplace. We love working with organisations that want to make a difference, and we love feeding their staff's stomachs and souls.
You can join our movement.
We're not very proprietorial about what we've learnt. We want to be part of a social enterprise revolution. And we really want to reach out to the people in this room and say, we're here to help you. Do you have 5 friends who want to make a difference? Are you involved in a business where you can see an adjacent social enterprise opportunity? Can you rope in a bit of finance, some strategic skills, and a lot of favours? And have you got something that you want to put on the front of your t-shirt? And then how can we help you? And then who knows, maybe like in 80 years' time, Patil's grandson or granddaughter will be standing on a stage like this, communicating with technology we cannot even imagine, and reflecting on how we and you genuinely help to make a better world.
Well, they will definitely talk about the Bread and Butter project because it's the place where I met my fiancé. And, and before 2 months, he asked me to marry him, and I said yes.
So the muffin queen of Marrickville, originally from Aleppo, meets an almost maths teacher from Mosul. And we can't guarantee that every person we train, we will be able to find life partners for. That KPI is a bit high. But it has been absolutely a blessing to be involved in helping Salwan and Patil start their new life in Australia together. And we'd love you to become part of that. And you can start by coming and having some food with us in the break, and you can wish Salwan and Patil, Salwan's actually at the bakery at the moment, there's a photo of him though, you can start by wishing them Shno Chavoela, Mabruk and Mazel Tov. Thank you very much.